If there's any class in MapleStory that over the years could be considered the favorite, both among players and the developers, it's Nightlord. They've never ever really been in a bad spot ever, and at worst, they've hovered around the middle of the road in terms of damage outputs stacked against all other classes. Historically, they've always been an insanely good bossing class, shaping a lot of Maple's meta throughout the decades. Fast forwarding to current day, yeah, they're still really good. A handful of great mobility and positioning skills, their mobbing is decent and only gets better with every new job rank. And of course, their bossing never stopped being bad. So let's kick things off, starting by explaining their vital skills. First job's got some passives. Lucky 7's a basic mobbing skill, and Flash Jump is the mobility skill. And for Nightlord, it lets them use it twice in the air. Dark Sight is a fairly basic stealth skill that not only allows you to dodge being hit by touch damage on enemies, and some but not all attacks, but also a lot of projectiles in bosses that drop things from the sky. It has a cooldown depending on how many attacks were dodged, building up one 3-second cooldown stack up to 5 times, for a max cooldown of 15 seconds at worst. Dark Sight is really handy once you start fighting bosses. Second job introduces your big important toggle, Assassin's Mark, which when toggled on, has a chance to place marks on enemies with your attacks, which spawns stars that fly out and hit enemies. You'll want this on all the time for everything, as it's just free damage alongside everything else you do. Shadow Surge is a stubby little dash forward that also stealths you temporarily at the end of its dash, but don't let its shortness deceive you. You can cut off all momentum if you're flying through the air, either because a boss sent you flying, or just from flash jumping around. 5-second cooldown, with the cooldown going down by 1 second every time you attack enemies marked with Assassin's Mark. Shadow Leap is simply just a spinny looking up jump, significant in that it carries all horizontal momentum you've built up, whether that's walking a little bit forward, or flying through the air at Mach speed. It can only be used once, either from the ground or in the air, until you touch some kind of ground again. There's also all these passives, a basic mobbing skill upgrade that detonates on impact with the first enemy it comes in contact with, and a little knockback mobbing skill. Third job introduces another basic mobbing skill upgrade, as well as your first single target skill through triple throw. If you wanted to double that number, from 3 to 6, you also get Shadow Partner, which is an insanely good buff that doubles all your lines for everything you do, at 70% effectiveness, at least for direct attacks. Summons, like Dark Flare, stay at the same amount of lines. In this case, just 1. Regardless, no cooldown, it covers a pretty decent area, and it's just constant damage for all enemies nearby it. One thing I've yet to mention to any length so far for Nightlord is the consumption of stars per attacking skill they do. Up to this point, each attack only costs anywhere from 1 to 3 stars per attack, and you can refill said stars at merchants in various towns. But once you reach third job, all that goes out the window, and you can just permanently have infinite throwing stars that never deplete through this skill, Spirit of the Star. It's a passive, also bumping up your attack and boss damage slightly. But yeah, I recommend getting at least 1 singular point into this passive once you reach third job. The rest of Nightlord's skills at third are just more basic passives, with the exceptions being Venom, which gives you poison damage with all your attacks, so a free constant enemy debuff, and Alchemic Adrenaline, which makes healing potions much more effective. Unless they're elixirs, apparently. Fourth job has upgrade passives for your Assassin's Mark toggle and Venom passive, more expected passives, but including Shadow Shifter, which gives you a chance to dodge enemy attacks, Maple Warrior and Heroes will, of course, and this simple 2-second iframe button with a 1-minute cooldown. Sudden Raid is an explosion all around your character, hitting nearby enemies, and also placing a damage over time on them, 30-second cooldown. Frailty Curse is another summon that you can use as much as you want, but it doesn't do damage. Instead, it's a field that lowers enemy attack, defense, and movement speed for all enemies except bosses. For now. That'll change at Hypers. Anyways, yeah, you also get an upgrade to your bossing skill, Quad Star, which is also your main bossing skill from here on out, all the way up to max level. Additionally, your main mobbing skill, Showdown. Showdown is neat and unique in that 1, it does extra damage to normal enemies, and 2, it marks all enemies it hits with Provoke, which makes them untouchable for the next 2 minutes and change, as well as increases their XP and drop rate ever so slightly. Untouchable means enemies' contact/touch damage will not hurt you, with some extra addendums on bosses. I'll get into it later. Speaking of, Provoke also works on bosses, with the only key difference being the XP and drop rate effect is halved. Everything I've explained so far is just the first part of the attack, the stab. The second part is the purple explosion, which every 5 seconds, whether you land said attack on an enemy or not, spawns 6 shurikens that fly towards nearby enemies. Subsequent shuriken hits on the same enemy decrease its damage by half for every hit past the first. Hyper skills, real quick and simple. Death Star is just an attack above you and around you, hitting enemies nearby. 14-second cooldown. Epic Adventure is a 10% damage buff for you and all other Explorer classes in your party. 1 minute uptime, 2 minute cooldown. And Bleed Dart gives you another big damage over time poison, alongside a flat attack buff. No cooldown, and if you right click the skill icon, it hides the green star above your head when you have it on. None of these hyper passives for Night Lord are bad really. The only exception being a Frailty Curse slow. Not really any use for this. No matter what you choose, just avoid that one. In terms of what you do want to get, that depends on what your focus is going to be. All the showdown hypers are great for grinding, especially the enhanced one that doubles the XP and item drop rate up to 10%. Reinforce for extra damage and spread for 2 more enemies hit are also good, but if you were to get any of these for grinding, make sure it's enhanced. Of course, all the quad star passives are great for bossing. Every single one just keeps upping the damage. You can't go wrong with even getting some for a grinding setup, as the Night Lord Discord's hyper passive guide suggests. I assume because there's not much else to focus on or get, and that could be useful for when elite monsters show up. Frailty Curse is the real make or break hyper passives wise. Both meaningful upgrades for it are chosen with bossing in mind. Remember how it doesn't work on bosses? Boss Rush changes that. I'd highly recommend getting that, because that's essentially a 30% ignore enemy defense field whenever it's on a boss. Enhance is great too regarding that, because that bumps it up to 40%, not to mention the extra attack power it also reduces. Summed up for those wanting a quick visual reference, these passives for bossing, these for grinding, and then these for a hybrid build, if you just wanted a setup that didn't require you to keep swapping around your hyper passives whenever you wanted to do bossing or training. Moving right along onto 5th job, Throw Blasting passively makes 1 explosive charm every 10 seconds with your attacks. Said charm flies in and explodes in its area, hitting some enemies nearby. Click the skill and that passive goes away and gets replaced with 46 charms that come out with your attacks without a cooldown. You can use said charms however you want until they deplete, or after 1 minute, which is when the stack/buff ends. 2 minute cooldown. Shuriken is a new attack that tosses a giant star forward and stops at the end of its max range, or if you click the skill again. Once it stops flying forward, for 2 whole seconds it just spins in place like a saw blade and just hacks through enemies touching it. Weirdly enough, it has a reduced chance of triggering your Assassin's Mark toggle, which kinda makes sense because of how much it hits, but kinda disappointing nonetheless. 25-second cooldown. Throwing Star Barrage is a more so bossing focused buff that makes your throwing skills spread out, tossing more stars with the spread, and dealing more damage on said spread out stars. 30-second duration, 2 minute cooldown. Also, said spread stars seemingly stop Shadow Partner's supplemental lines. Dark Lord's Omen summons a big ball that keeps spewing stars out of it while it's active for its total duration of 12 seconds. After which, either when the duration ends or if you click the skill again, the ball explodes, dealing a little bit more damage in its area. It also does more damage specifically to bosses. 1 minute cooldown. Shared Explorer skills. Shadow Walker shoves you into a new type of stealth that persists even as you attack. It also gives some final damage. 20-second duration, 149-second cooldown, going down to a nice even 2 minutes at max level. Maple World Goddess's Blessing is very simply a buff that makes Maple Warrior's passive more effective and gives a slight bump in damage while active. 1 minute duration, 2 minute cooldown. Now on to Shared Thief skills. Last Resort is the most important for all thieves, being yet another damage buff. Passively, it gives some flat attack, and actively, it has 2 stages. Each one you can activate by clicking the skill again, or if you right-click Last Resort, it starts from the 2nd stage, which is commonly what most people do for burst purposes while bossing. Apparently now you can also get into stage 2 by holding down and clicking the skill. That's news to me. Stage 1 lasts for 30 seconds and increases your final damage dealt at the cost of slightly reduced avoidability and increased damage taken. Stage 2 halves the remaining duration and increases the final damage, as well as the reduced avoidability and increased damage taken. Clicking a third time just cancels the buff entirely, if you just wanted it gone for whatever reason. 75-second cooldown, going down to 1 minute at max level. In some later future update, Last Resort gets changed to remove the downsides of reduced avoidability and increased damage taken, so now there's like no risk for using it. Likewise, Venom Burst currently is one of the most useless skills in all of Maple. It has its niches for classes like Kadena, but as it stands as of the time publishing this video, it just passively places a tiny damage over time on enemies, and actively when you click it, it spreads said dot to nearby enemies. The damage is very minimal, and it's usually just better to replace it with any other skill. However, I believe alongside that Last Resort update, it changes to instead be strictly a passive that makes its dot last longer and deal more damage. Also, it seems every thief now gets some kind of unique little icon when using it. That's kinda cool. Normally, 6th Job doesn't change classes too much, but for Night Lord, their masteries kinda change some things. First off, their origin skill, life and death, standard origin shenanigans. It's a true bind separate from the global bind timer, an iframe while it's casting the whole big cinematic first part of it, and has a big old damage aspect with a star flying around the map constantly attacking enemies. It also changes the color of everything in the map you're in, and if you wanted that gone, just right click to toggle it off so everything goes back to normal. Mostly normal. As for the attack part, which lasts for a whole minute, it spawns special throwing stars that fly around the map, hitting enemies pretty much constantly so long as they're on screen. It looks pretty damn neat. Just like every other origin, it's got a 6-minute cooldown. Sometimes the 5th Job skill boosts at 6 change slightly beyond damage, but not for Night Lord. It's all just final damage increases. Hexa masteries, however, are where the real changes happen. First, Hexa Quad Star now has a new effect where after 3 of its casts actually hit enemies, the 4th now gets an enhanced version of Quad, which does a bit more damage, hits multiple mobs rather than be strictly single target, and gets a new animation. No cooldown on its creation, it just happens every 4th use of Hexa Quad, so long as those hits keep hitting enemies. Here's the hexas that don't change much beyond damage. Hexa Assassin's Mark now has 5% more chance to make marks on enemies. Hexa Dark Flare gets a huge bump up in size and damage, and passively makes Quad Star stronger. Hexa Showdown now gives 1% more on the XP and drop rate functions of its base skill, going up to 6% for each. And Hexa Sudden Raid gets its cooldown roughly halved, and passively makes Assassin's Mark stronger. Hexa Death Star, however, breaks the mold a little, and is more or less the same for the first part. Though after the skill hits enemies, it upgrades to a new variant called Rampant that now does loads more attacks called Annihilate, hitting a total of 42 extra times, which doubles under Shadow Partner. Ending off skills, here's something else new. Darkness Shuriken is a strange new passive that gives a buff, functioning similarly to Throw Blasting's active part. Land an attack, and you get a 10-second buff with 30 stacks. Said stacks make even more stars flying out of you and hitting enemies. Attack again after you get said buff, and that duration increases by 7 seconds. From that second attack onward, every 5 seconds, you can increase the duration of said passive by 7 seconds, up to a maximum of 1 minute, or until you use up all 30 stacks. The actual stacks don't have a cooldown or limit. You can use up all 30 however you deem fit. Regardless if you can make full use of Darkness Shuriken in time or not, it's got a 1-minute cooldown. As long as you remain active and keep hitting enemies directly while in combat, you're golden. So here's how you make Night Lord easy. Make use of everything flying out of you. You just keep getting more and more passive stars and charms and shurikens and whatnots that spawn with you attacking, so if you can keep your foot on the gas throughout whatever you do while in combat, you're doing great. Shadow Surge should be utilized as often as you can. Get familiar with how it works with everything you do mobility-wise. It can be extremely handy not only as a handbrake if you needed to instantly dead stop right then and there, but also as a positioning tool for quickly dashing out of danger, either from various boss attacks, or even just to give yourself a little bit more distance to reach a platform you undershot and didn't quite reach with your double flash jump. Out of any possible Oz ring you can get in Maple for Night Lord, there's one that stands above all. Ring of Restraint 4. Night Lords in their class Discord like making it a huge meme among themselves that Night Lord isn't actually a class until they get Ring of Restraint 4. But to their credit and defense, if the difference between the usual other rings is this big, with ROR 4 being over double as effective as any other ring they could get tied at level 4, yeah, I get why it's a meme. I personally can't think of any other class that touts and lords over everybody amongst their community that they absolutely must use ROR for far and above all else. So yeah, good luck on getting a Ring of Restraint. 3's good too, but if you get a 4, all the better. For grinding, place down Dark Flare and Urda Fountain if you have it in one area. Attack with Showdown for slightly more XP, drop, and also the shurikens it makes every 5 seconds. Then cycle around whatever 5th skills you felt like. Same with Sudden Raid and Death Star if you wanted more coverage. That is all you have to really do. Even at 6th job, it just improves once you unlock Soul Janus, especially if you just leave it on Dusk, because that's what Night Lord needed, even more things coming out of you with your attacks. Soul Janus Dawn is fine too for just covering larger maps. Night Lord's map clear nowadays is really solid. For bossing, you're going to be doing loads of damage no matter what attacks you decide to use. Obviously, that should mainly be your 5th job skills in Quad Star. So for now, let's instead focus on survivability. Night Lord as of very recent now has a dedicated iframe button, which is pretty handy to remember. Iframes are good for every class. Dark Sight is another real handy skill, trivializing nearly every single projectile related attack in bosses. There's some exceptions I think, but it even works well into the Tenebris Gauntlet, including Black Mage's Curse Balls everywhere, and Darknell's Meteors. Showdown's untouchable aspect is extremely valuable for both solo and party play. What it can and can't do is kind of unclear, but any attacks that make direct contact with you and the boss are entirely negated, so the dash attacks of Damien, Magnus, Will, and Saren have all been neutered. They do nothing once you use Showdown on them. You can also use it on bosses that summon a bunch of minions, such as Guardian Angel Slime, to negate all the tiny slimes from attacking you with their various debuffs as you focus on the actual boss. Again, as I've mentioned for the damage, just spam Quad Star, toss in a Shuriken if you felt like it, and then all your 5ths while still spamming Quad Star when it comes time for Burst. Though at 6th, when you get your 4th mastery, try to queue up a Hexa Death Star Rampant before using the active part of Throw Blasting. If you do so, and then use Death Star when it's on Rampant, it can hit a total of 84 times and proc around half the total Throw Blasting stacks all at once. Also, don't forget to have Frailty Curse out to weaken the boss a good deal. That also applies to everyone in your party. Yeah, you may have infinite throwing stars since reaching 3rd job, but practically all throwing stars also give you attack. So what's the best throwing star to track down and obtain? If we're talking purely about damage, Balanced Furies, which give 30 attack. In Reg server, I think you can just buy them on the auction house. But if you're over in Heroic servers, you gotta farm out Crimsonwood Forest for about a week or so to get 100 Raven Ninja coins to buy them. In the same shop for 10 coins less, you can get Crystal Ilbies, which, yeah, have 1 less attack than Furies, but I love how they look. These are my favorite stars in all of Maple, and have been for the past, 15 years. I personally am willing to sacrifice 1 whole attack for what I believe to be the cleanest, coolest looking stars in the whole game. But yeah, Balanced Furies are best in slot. You should be using sequences by now. There's no excuse. They speed up buffing, they speed up casting everything you'll use during your main and off burst faster than you can click it, and here's what you'll want. I personally like having one for buffs whenever I forget to pull my pets out of storage. That can just consist of whatever decent skills you have, alongside Shadow Partner and Bleed Dart. If you have one though, use a pet with auto buff, so you don't have to keep casting Bleed Dart every minute and a half. If you don't have one, go farm Ninja Castle until a Toad pet drops. They come with auto buff for free, and can be transferred throughout your characters. I even made a short about how to do Ninja Castle. Anyways, your main burst button is gonna be this: Epic Adventure, Frailty Curse, Throw Blasting, Maple World Goddess's Blessing, Throwing Star Barrage, Shadow Walker, Last Resort, and AB's Link, Terms and Conditions. The order matters fairly minimally, but usually it's just good practice to have your most important shorter lasting buffs at the very end, to get the most use out of them as theoretically possible. As talked about earlier too, ring skill at the very end, preferably Ring of Restraint 4, for absolute peak Night Lord damage. Your off burst can be the same exact button as your full burst button, as the Night Lord Discord's guide suggests, or you can be like me and make a whole separate one if you're used to just having an off burst button located elsewhere. Said off burst sequence only really needs to be AB Link, Last Resort, and Frailty Curse, but whatever else is just a buff that you wanted to ensure is on you when it comes time to burst can also be shoved in here if you felt like it. Let's make this quick. Link skills. Grinding. Anything that bumps up your XP, and normal monster damage. Evan, Mercedes, Aran, Lara, and Ho-Young are all great. Fill in the gaps with whatever else you have or wanted to use. Bossing. AB Link for absolutely certain. That is non-negotiable. Everything else can be boss damage increasing links like Demon Slayer and Lin, Mojuan and Arcs are great. Anything that beefs up your damage is useful. Some layout like this. Resistance Link for extra survivability is always lovely too. Inner ability is fairly basic. For a bossing IA, first line boss damage, second and third lines flat attack and abnormal status damage, or buff duration for a longer AB Link if you want it to be experimental. No need for attack speed +1 because Night Lord already reaches the attack speed cap thankfully. Grinding, drop, meso, and normal monster damage. The Trinodes Night Lord wants are everything that gets boosted at 6th job, and thankfully, as such, everything is squared away into 2 clean, nice, neat sets of tries. For a quote-unquote bossing Trinode, Quad Star, Assassin's Mark, and Showdown. Even though Showdown is mainly your mobber, it still has its uses for that untouchable debuff and minimal drop rate. For the second Trinode, mainly geared towards grinding, that'll consist of Death Star, Sudden Raid, and Dark Flare. So Night Lord's Burst, it's not that crazy. First, make sure Assassin's Mark is up and active, alongside all your buffs, especially Shadow Partner and Bleed Dart. If you wanted more damage, you could also place down Dark Flare, though it's mostly optional. Frailty Curse too if you didn't add that to any of your sequences. That's a big important buff for bosses. Then, pop Dark Lord's Omen, your full 2-minute burst sequence, click Shuriken twice to send it flying out and then stop right on the boss, and spam Quad Star. That is all you do. Your off burst is identical, just without all the 2-minute buffs that were part of your full burst sequence. And also Dark Lord's Omen now appearing after you pop your mini burst sequence. At 6th job it changes slightly, yes with Origin, but namely also with Death Star. Firstly, you can pop your Origin right after your full burst to optimize damage output, and then follow that up with a basic bind if you or someone in your party has one. Secondly, if you have at the very least your 4th mastery in specific for Hexa Death Star, charge up a Death Star rampant before burst. Then once you go through your whole burst, toss that in before your Shuriken cast, or after Shuriken for your off burst, and then go back to spamming Quad Star. Now as you hold down Quad Star, sit back and watch a bajillion lines flood your screen, preferably with the Keyboard Warrior damage skin. Funny little story. I used to love Night Lord. They were my first 5th job class when 5th job came out, and then when I came back to Maple, I absolutely hated playing mine. This was before their Destiny rework, but even still, I recognize now I was just bad and didn't have the hands necessary to play them properly. They're really fun, and after getting all their Hexa masteries recently, I'm enjoying them a whole lot more again. Hopefully if you plan to stick with Night Lord, you too can get a Ring of Restraint for as soon as possible. Thanks to the Night Lord Discord for their big ol' Night Lord guide, and thanks to you for watching my guide. Hopefully it was helpful to somebody out there wanting to learn more about Night Lord. If you have other video ideas, tell me all about them in the comments. If you wanted to support my channel or wanted to be there as soon as possible when my next video comes out, consider subscribing. Until next time, that's all.